All right, so welcome back. This is Inside Pages on Metro Television. My name is Audu Moore. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you very much for staying with us. Now, as I did indicate at the start of the show, we have two very important conversations to have. One is the happenings or the developments with the central bank. The minority has held a news conference. The minority is being heavily critical of the central bank, the monetary policy committee headed by the central bank governor, Dr. Ernest Addison. They are asking the central bank governor, Dr. Ernest Addison, to quit his position because he's not fit for there. As far as the minority is concerned, he's run the bank aground. We're looking at 60.8 billion, colossal, huge, staggering amount of money that has been lost. But the central bank explains because the central bank says that it's not our fault. We'd have to lose that money in order to save the economy. Would question, would interrogate that. But suffice to know that we're talking about 48 billion of impaired capital from the debt exchange. We're also saying the Bank of Ghana is saying the negative equity position is not as a result of suboptimal policy decisions, but the restructuring of government debt and also adverse market movement. We'll try and explain all of that to you. They may sound like jargon, but they're quite simple and quite basic. We'll explain all of that to you. But before we do that, let me also say that our second topic is about the fact that the Special Office of the Special Prosecutor is in court. Because it wants the court to confirm an action it has taken. It's decided to confiscate some property belonging to the embattled former Minister of Sanitation. There's actually a charge sheet also, which the Attorney General, it's a charge sheet, but you can get a case has been, created by the Attorney General. The Attorney General, based on an opinion that the Attorney General has given, and that sort of contradicts slightly with the charge sheet or an amended charge sheet that we all know about, which will tell you what the differences are. And then also there's also another amended charge sheet. So the two amended charge sheets. One says 4. One that talks about the fact that there's just 4 persons who are being accused, and then the second amended charge sheet says 8 persons are being accused, and they're standing trial in court. But before we get to that, let's do this. Let's watch the minorities press conference on their issue with the central bank governor, and also some reactions from Ghanaians.
We now present to you the manifestations of the mismanagement and the ineptitude and the potential corruption at the Bank of Ghana, which was revealed by the 2022 annual report and the financial statement of the Bank of Ghana. 1. The report revealed that millions of Ghana cedis have been wasted on frivolous administrative expenses. The Bank of Ghana spent a whopping 131.6 million Ghana cedis on motor vehicle maintenance and its running in the year 2022 alone. In fact, this represents 114% increase over the previous year's expenditure on the same line item. Similarly, foreign and domestic travels of the Bank of Ghana cost the taxpayer a staggering 97.4 million Ghana cedis, which again is an increase of 246% over the previous year's expenditure. The Bank of Ghana also dissipated another 8.6 million Ghana cedis on directors' remuneration alone. This represents about 87% increase over the previous year's expenditure. Directors' remuneration, 8.6 million Ghana cedis. If you are to compare this to the previous year, this represents 87% increase over the previous year. This simply means that Ghanaians were charged a mismanagement fee to deliver the collapse of the central bank. The Bank of Ghana further claimed to have spent a colossal 357.9 million Ghana cedis on banking supervision expenses for the year 2022 alone. The report further disclosed that the Bank of Ghana spent a whopping 67.9 million Ghana cedis on computers expenses alone, whilst communication expenses also amounted to 32 million Ghana cedis. Communication alone. just to meet the press, they spent 32 million Ghana cedis for 1 year, the year 2022. The report further disclosed that an undisclosed expense of 287.8 million Ghana cedis was paid. Undisclosed. They could not account for 287 million Ghana cedis. I beg to ask, is the central bank the Ministry of National Security? It's only the National Security that can announce an amount that is undisclosed. So an amount of 287.8 million Ghana cedis that they have failed to disclose to the auditors begs for certain questions. We also saw in the report that the Bank of Ghana indeed spent an amount of $2 million on gold watches alone. I don't know who they bought the watches for, whether it's for the governor and the deputies. $2 million only on watches. Perhaps the more troubling fact is that, having brought the Bank of Ghana to this terrible financial state, the governor and his deputies have found it prudent and expedient to invest $250 million, representing almost 3 billion Ghana cedis, on another head office building somewhere at Rage. In our circumstances, this is the height of insensitivity in the management of the financing of a troubled country. A country that is in a major crisis. You have decided to award a contract worth $250 million, representing approximately 3 billion Ghana cedis, for the purposes of getting yourself a new head office. We believe that this is insensitive and it is not right for the governor of the central bank to go into this expedition at this time. The Bank of Ghana's illegal printing of money is responsible for the depletion of Ghana's external reserve, which resulted in the unprecedented depreciation we saw in the year 2022, which obviously is the main cause of the hyperinflation of 54-point-something% we saw in the year 2022. It is important to state that the governor of the Bank of Ghana breached Section 37 of the Bank of Ghana Act 2012, Act 612, and Section 60 of the Bank of Ghana Amendment Act 2016, Act 918. In fact, the governor breached the laws of the central bank, which calls for urgent action against the governor of the central bank. An estimated 850,000 people were further reported by the World Bank recently that they have this singular act of the Bank of Ghana has pushed them down the poverty line as a result of the hyperinflation that the central bank caused in the year 2022. Clearly, there's blood on the hands of the governor of the central bank and his deputies. It is now obvious that many more members of the Akufo-Addo, Dr. Bawumia government will likely be keeping several more millions of dollars in their bedrooms and building a war chest to illegally buy electoral votes at both party primaries and the upcoming general elections in the year 2024. We will not be surprised that if members of the economic management team involved in this contest makes a strong showing, I won't be surprised at all, because clearly everything shows that maybe it's not only Madam Cecilia Dapa who has kept some money in her bedroom. Let me assure you that very soon Ghanaians will be made to pay for Bank of Ghana recapitalization levy, a tax to recapitalize the Bank of Ghana. So as we speak, because the central bank has collapsed virtually. It is, however, our position that we have so recklessly, the government of Ghana has so recklessly mismanaged the central bank and brought it to its knees and cannot remain at the helm of affairs of the bank without being held accountable. Those who have led this reckless and criminal conduct unleashed economic hardship and financial distress on the suffering people of Ghana must be held accountable on this particular action. In fact, impunity of the highest order can no longer be tolerated by the suffering masses of Ghanaians. We must not allow this dangerous precedent to be set for future leaders. In this regard, we in the NDC call for the resignation, immediate resignation, of the Governor of the Central Bank and his deputies within 21 days from today. We are resolved to embark on popular action to occupy the Central Bank and drive out the team of inept, callous, and criminally minded mismanagers of our finances to save the Bank of Ghana. What we will do is that the march will ensure accountability. Colleagues, the march to ensure accountability will begin in 21 days if the Governor of the Bank of Ghana does not do the needful and pack bag and baggages out of that sacred institution that he has unfortunately mismanaged. Dr. Ernest Addison and his deputies must go.
This is the supposed $250 million ultra-modern new headquarters for the Bank of Ghana. According to the central bank, its current office is not fit for purpose after undertaking a structural integrity assessment. It says the building also does not have the required strength to withstand an earthquake. Some Ghanaians who are obviously not happy with the losses recorded by the Bank of Ghana are calling on the Office of the Special Prosecutor to open investigations into the operations of the Bank of Ghana and its losses.
Yeah, SP. Oh, to me just a man on obet me dream ye no hu de asam na de etiefa say ampa de a ene mla no mo ye de eno mla no kasa enform no no mundi ene betima aboa ne so enya digidi o ye de oh mu ba dan asem de in fact ye ni problem bia o dan no ho
ye friend mo man ke ne kwan so no because say de ye ka de sika na asefo yira o minim say nipa de obi edidi na adwuma ho Ghana for de before the any patuntum the intimi yet se broni. Say be intimi yet se broni and he develop over more than Kwame Nkrumah time. To be honest, Ghana for fan chemi. But seven no credit into sebi. Ne no kre mo no. Enti yen hwehwem. Na baby am man send fan da no. Yen fan to na Ghana for hu. Yen hu setisi ane gidie ne trust kakra de ba Ghana for matches yeso betimi nya dudidio say me wo me country mu ntimi ye proud.
Some also said the new building by the special prosecutor is a misplaced priority.
Mo check hasipa nipa wo say bia tiska we no ye the pompi go baby my economic and mo ye mreka kama anya sin bia best dan we the anka yes musi, but this is not the time.
This is what Emmanuel Ejekum had to say on calls by the minority members to the governor of the Bank of Ghana to resign.
Now I'm not proud in my country because yam penny for ni diabro. Say or resign or woman resign. Now ye who the way mo di Ghana for burning. And God will judge you guys.
We have heard from a section of Ghanaians. According to them, they have no issue with the new building of the Bank of Ghana. But the Bank of Ghana should be accountable for every losses that they have caused this country. They have also referred the Bank of Ghana to the Special Prosecutor for further investigation. Alberta BC Wansong reporting for Metro News, Accra, Rich.
This is the supposed $250 million ultra-modern new headquarters for the Bank of Ghana. According to the central bank, its current office is not fit for purpose after undertaking a structural integrity assessment. It says the building also does not have the required strength to withstand an earthquake. Some Ghanaians who are obviously not happy with the losses recorded by the Bank of Ghana are calling on the Office of the Special Prosecutor to open investigations into the operations.
All right, so those were videos and materials that we intend to set the tone for the conversation this morning. And the conversation this morning has got to do with the development at the central bank. We told you about the minorities press conference that they held in reaction to the audited financial statement or report of the central bank, which reveals that it had lost about 60.8 billion Ghana cedis, 48 billion due to impaired, due to impaired capital from the debt restructuring. And it explains that this is nothing to do with, it's nothing to do with suboptimal policy, and that the restructuring of government debt is why they've had to lose so much money. But that's just one leg of the conversation. The other one has to do with other expenditure that the central bank has made in terms of goods and services, which has also raised some eyebrows and also have made a section of Ghanaians a bit upset. To think that we're living an austere, moment, austere, times, and yet the central bank can find money to do all of that. But the central bank has said, well, the central bank has come out to justify it and said these are things that we need to do, or we needed to do. So if you check, for instance, excess from the 2022 annual report of the Bank of Ghana, you see 250 million cedis for a new head office. And that is, in itself has come under some contention because, for instance, I was watching Good Morning Ghana, Metro TV, where Randy Abbey was actually giving us a list of other properties or facilities that have been built bigger than the Central Bank of Ghana, what the Central Bank intends to build, and it's costing far less. So that is also another subject of controversy. There's 2 million cedis for gold watches. We don't know what that, but we've not been told what that is. But 2 million for gold watches, and then there's 131 million for car maintenance. There's 97.4 million for traveling. There's 67 million cedis for computer expenses, 32 million cedis for communication expenses. There's 8.6 million remuneration for directors, 68% increase of 2021 salaries, etc. So those are some of the excepts from the 2022 annual report, audited annual report of the Bank of Ghana, and some of the expenditure on goods and services that it has incurred. And some persons are not, a section of Ghanaians, including the minority, are not happy with the way the central bank has handled our money. Now, the Central Bank of Ghana, we all know, have a core mandate. So, stabilize prices, regulate the financial sector, stabilize the financial sector, influence GDP, employment, etc. Those are the core mandate. They have non-core mandate. The non-core mandate is one of which they've done. When the finance ministry needs money, it comes to them and says, we're broke, so can you help us with some money? And the central bank says, yeah, here's your money. Now, let me just introduce our resource persons this morning, including one person who's going to be joining us via Zoom. Professor Lord Mensah will be joining us via Zoom. He is a professor of finance and economics, University of Ghana Business School. He's joining us shortly via Zoom to give us his perspective, or to share his perspective on this matter. And then here in the studio, we have three eminent persons who will give us, again, their views on this matter. One is a member of the minority, of course, member of parliament for Cape Coast South. That's Mr. George Ricketts Hagan. He's here with us. Good morning, sir. Thank you very much for joining us. We're glad you joined us, sir. Thank you. And then also we have Mr. Alfred Thompson. Now, he has in-depth knowledge on banking and finance, and so it is perfectly understandable why he's here representing the New Patriotic Party's Communications Bureau. Thank you very much for joining us, sir. Mr. Alfred Thompson, thank you so very much. And then a very good friend of mine, I call it my counsel Bakope, is my one and only lawyer, very astute, a very dependable lawyer. He only speaks to Metro TV. Proud of that. He doesn't talk to any media house. Anyway, that's lawyer Rindolph Chumisi Ankara. Thank you very much for joining us, sir. Okay. Now, he may not necessarily pass just brief comment on how do you call the happenings at the central bank, but he's here purposely because of the Cecilia Dapama, because he's been following it for a long time. He's taken a particular interest in it as a lawyer, and so he has some views to share on the Cecilia Dapa issue. So I don't know why I have Professor Lord Mensah on Zoom now, so we can go to him. Otherwise, I'll start with the Honorable George Ricketts Hagan, who's a member of parliament for Cape Coast South, but also remember that he is also a former deputy minister for finance, and so he knows exactly what he's talking about. Good morning once again, sir. Now, why did the minority decide to hold a news conference and to ask that the central bank governor, Dr. Ernest Addison, vacates or quits his position as the central bank governor? If he doesn't, you've given him 21 days. So now I think it's about 18 more days to go. You will go there personally and protest until he gets out of there. Why do you want to blame him solely for a decision he says he had to make? Otherwise, the economy would have collapsed. Aren't you rather happy that he saved the economy from collapsing?
Thank you. Thank you very much. And good morning to my colleagues here on the panel. Good morning to the good people of Cape Coast South. If you look at the obviously the report that we are all looking at, the Bank of Ghana report,
Right.
you will discover so many rots in the report,
Okay.
which was led, not only led, but he was also the architect of the mess that we found in that report.
And that's Dr. Ernest Addison.
That's Dr. Ernest Anderson.
Okay.
And it is for that reason that we thought his position has become untenable.
Okay.
First of all, there were things that we were talking about in the past, which was to do with the financing of government from the central bank, which on many occasions the central bank actually denied and gave us a lot of flimsy excuses for those happenings.
In fact, to be fair to you, it was the minority that broke the news.
Yes.
It must have been sometime last year.
Yeah.
You did a press conference and said you have
Absolutely.
uncovered something
Yeah.
and that you wanted the public to know.
Yeah.
And then the central bank came out to say
Came
it wasn't
to,
untrue.
with a response.
They said it was an overdraft.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which there was an overdraft, there was a repurchasing repos and a whole
Right.
lot of other things,
Right.
which basically did not add up
Okay.
to why we had those monies that we discovered,
Right.
which has been transferred to government, basically through printing of money. Now, when we went on the IMF program, I think some of the things we are seeing today, basically as a result of us going to the IMF program, probably some of these things we wouldn't have known them. I am even beginning to believe that the reason why the government and the central bank obviously were resistant to go to the IMF was partly because that is a place where when they go, they will be forced to basically tell us the truth on what is happening. So it is not surprising that this report basically, has come out with that they had to come clean and start rebuilding from there. And the first thing that obviously has caught the attention of all of us is the colossal sum of money, which is the impairment loss that you are talking about, which is 60.8 billion. It's never happened in the history of this country.
It's unprecedented.
Unprecedented. In fact, where you have seen this somewhere around 2017 was only just over a billion. So whether it's a profit or loss doesn't normally exceed in our history, just a little over maybe 1 billion. But for us to move to this huge unprecedented amount of 60 billion has become quite alarming. That what exactly is going on with the central bank and between the central bank and the government of Ghana. We all do know that the central bank is the bank of the republic. Therefore, as you rightly said, bond issues and all those things are done on behalf of the government of the republic, basically upon the instruction of the government to go out there and raise money, for the governor to go out there and raise money for the government. Don't forget that Bank of Ghana actually is not really in the business of making profits. A lot of the asset that a Bank of Ghana has does not belong to Bank of Ghana. It actually belongs to the Republic of Ghana. Therefore, if you take a budget and you look at the budget itself, you realize that in a way it's a mirror of Bank of Ghana's own balance sheet. Because whatever we get as a country in terms of revenue, whether they are tax revenue, they are export revenue, they are oil revenue, they are Eurobond proceeds, cocoa syndicated, all gets deposited at the Bank of Ghana. So this together becomes the revenue of the country upon which the government of Ghana will spend from. The expenditure, which is a drawdown on these monies, is done also by the Ministry of Finance and the controller to be able to draw down from the central bank. So basically, if you want to look at, you can actually see your deficit mirrored at the Bank of Ghana in terms of your revenue and your expenditure. The rest of the monies that the Bank of Ghana gets is actually through printing money, because that is what we get our notes. It doesn't come from anywhere other than the money printed. There are also other investments that the Bank of Ghana does with the Republic of Ghana's money. And that is to buy U.S. Treasury bills, invest in offshores, and then funds like Heritage Fund, which belongs to the Republic of Ghana, but the Bank of Ghana actually looks after it because it sits elsewhere for the Republic. In these activities, the Bank of Ghana then makes a certain returns on this investment. Then on the other side, they have operations where they spend money. So their total balance sheet is the one that mirrors the budget, plus their own operations, which are expenses, and the other income that they make in some of these areas that they invest the money. So at the end of the day, if there is a profit or loss, it should be very, very small on the operation side, because the rest of the money, which is the income that comes to the state, are all being, in the end, spent by the government, and it's not the money of the central bank. So to come up with a situation where the bank has lost 60 billion in 1 year is quite astronomical. Now, the question then becomes, how did this come about? From the picture that I've painted to you, which should not bring out losses or profit that is that much. In terms of profit, there is a distribution mechanism that the Bank of Ghana shares some profit it gets with the government of Ghana, because the government of Ghana 100% owns the central bank.
Right.
Okay. So basically, what we did say, or what has come to light in 2021 about these central bank finance, we realized that the central bank was financed with 35 billion in the year 2021. Then in the year 2022, they financed again the government through the central bank. And all these are done with money being printed.
Right.
Because the Bank of Ghana hasn't got any big money sitting anywhere, from the picture I've painted you, that everything that it has belongs to the Republic of Ghana. Therefore, if the government needs money to spend, it goes to draw down on its own money, that the Bank of Ghana is basically a custodian of that money. So clearly, these 2 years, 2021, 2022, an amount of 77 billion was basically came out of the central bank to finance government of Ghana's activity. Yes, you can say that he saved the world, if that is what he did. But there are clear rules. Bank of Ghana's Act, Public Financial Management Act, that states how you can conduct these kind of transactions. We were supposed to be doing, aiming towards zero, basically central bank finance. But we have a rule that allows for 5% of, not more than 5% of the previous year's total revenue. And that is the money that the Bank of Ghana can use in financing the central government.
Right.
Anything beyond that should come to Parliament for changes, which did happen during the COVID era, where they had to, change certain things for the economy to be able to get some room to breathe. Now, it has turned out that the central bank had gone over and above what they were supposed to have sent to the central government.
Which is the 5% threshold.
Yes. Now, and 35 billion and 42 billion is way about 10 or 20 times bigger than 5% of previous year's revenue.
True.
That resulted in that. Now, so that's one issue. The other issue is to do with the 48 billion that the central bank unilaterally decided to write off, which was against any best practice and breaches basically the rules. So these two issues, when you go further, the question also becomes, if you have lost 68 billion or 60 billion,
60.8 billion, right?
What were the causes that led to that impairment? Then the answer that comes from the central bank is that we saved the world. Had it not been that loss that we have taken or the hit that we have taken, we wouldn't have been able to do the debt, the domestic debt restructuring program. So you are telling us that almost over 50 billion, 53 or 55, whatever they want to call it, was basically used in taking a hit, let's say, for government.
Yep.
And we are saying that cannot be true. That amount of money cannot be true. Now, the other discovery is that a portion of it belongs to that debt restructuring, but not to that colossal amount of money. And even that is due to the debt restructuring, is the central bank's own doing, led by the Governor Addison.
Right.
And what was that? The government of Ghana, when, again, you rightly said, wants to raise money, it goes to the central bank, because the government itself cannot go to the market and raise the money. That's through the bank, both domestic and international, raising of bond or raising of money. Now, they go to the market and raise that money for the government. So again, that money that comes in, usually those loans are the ones that you use to bridge the gap in terms of the deficit. Because your revenue and your expenditure, the gap, is funded by loans,
right,
which is the treasuries, the bonds, the euro bonds, and all that we used to do in the past. Now, the only explanation and what has come to, or what has been discovered, is that the Bank of Ghana was buying its own bonds. The issuer, is buying his own bonds over and above what is basically the norm. Now, central banks, and this is as you rightly mentioned, their work of being monetary policy, price stabilization, financial stability, inflation, and all that, which is their core mandate. They are also responsible in basically maintaining interest rate in this process.
True.
One of the ways of maintaining interest rate is for central banks to issue these bonds and also be able to buy some. In doing so, they are able to influence interest rate and also the nation's money supply.
True.
On the average, the Bank of Ghana, any outstanding bonds that we have, domestic bonds, they are in, or their skin is in. If they say the skin in the financial world means that, basically an exposure.
Yeah.
They are in by around 9 to 10%. Which, if you look at say 2022, that is only about 16 billion. It's about 9% here, which is only about 16 billion. Now, if you have participated in the domestic debt restructuring program, 16 billion will not cause you an impairment of 60 billion.
Okay.
So basically, it means that Bank of Ghana has been buying more bonds to save the government than it should have.
Right.
So the first crime, and this probably has not come to light yet, the first crime in my eyes, as I say it, is that the Bank of Ghana, in trying to save the government or save the world, whichever one he was doing, was basically buying issues put out there that we are going to issue this amount of bonds. Now, you know that in the last couple of years, we have suffered investor confidence in this country.
Right.
Therefore, when you put a bonds out there, one of the ways to find out whether the confidence has gone down or not is the amount of subscription that you get. But what is actually happening here is that, say, Bank of Ghana puts out there that it's going to issue 100 million bonds, domestic bond, and he goes out there and 60 billion is bought, which basically means that they've had an under subscription.
Right.
The Bank of Ghana itself buys the other 40 billion and comes to tell you that the bonds have been oversubscribed. So it buys the bonds that the issuer buys the bond. As I said earlier, it's a common practice for central banks to buy a percentage of the bonds that they issue out to control interest rate, obviously, because the subscription determines the price.
Sure.
And the price is the interest rate or the coupon payment.
Right.
And then also, the money coming out of the system or going out of the system is basically the money supply issue. So they try to, all link to their core mandate. But they have been going over and above. Therefore, the government of Ghana, Bank of Ghana's own exposure, the Bank of Ghana's own exposure in Ghana's debt that was eligible for the debt program was more than it should be.
Okay.
Because other than that, but you are the public, I'm the central government, or the central bank. I issue bonds to you and I take money from you and give it to my boss, which is the government. If the government has come out with a policy of the debt restructuring or the debt exchange, and you are taking a hit, you, the investor, the bondholder, the pension fund holder, the insurance company, the banks, the investment houses, are taking a hit to a tune of 50%, which, if you remember, we were told that there wasn't going to be any haircut. Eventually, we had one. Then the hit is taken by you, not by the issuer. Because the issuer who was supposed to pay the coupons, which is the central bank, is now going to pay less because we are not giving you 50% of your receivables, which is what you should be receiving in terms of your investment.
Right.
But if that is not going to happen, then you are the one taking the hit.
True.
Me, who is the issuer, is saving my payables. The money that I should have paid to you is now not coming to you anymore.
Okay.
So you can look at this even as savings. How then can that be the central bank take a hit? So as I've explained to you, the central bank took a hit because it has bought its own bonds over and above the legal limit. Therefore, the Bank of Ghana itself was heavily in the game. And he being the issuer, he's buying his own bonds.
So basically, this was self-inflicted.
It's self-inflicted.
Okay.
And where is the Bank of Ghana getting the money from to buy the bond?
It
As
printed
I told
it.
you,
Like you said, it printed
the Bank
it.
of Ghana's balance sheet
Yeah.
is the government of Ghana's budget
Right.
plus its own operations.
Yeah.
Therefore, the money to buy those bonds in those colossal sums were coming from printing money.
Please hang in there. Let me quickly do this. I'll come to you, Alfred. Let me quickly speak to Professor Lord Mensah. He's been on for a while.
Yeah.
He will talk to us because he has other things to engage in. Professor Lord Mensah, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us on Inside Pages on Metro Television. We're glad that you made time to join us, sir. Hello, Prof.
Yes, good morning, Moro, and good morning to our... Hello, can you hear me, please?
I can hear you very clearly. I can hear you very clearly. Very audibly, sir.
Yeah.
I want to find out whether you can hear me clearly too.
Right. Hello?
Yes, you can you hear me clearly?
I can hear you. It looks like the network is not helping.
You are driving. If you can, I think you've parked. Sorry, you're not driving. You've parked somewhere. I think the problem has to do with where you find yourself. But here, everything is fine. Everything is okay. But let's proceed. I believe we can manage with this. We can manage with this. Yes.
Sure.
So, Prof, as I'm sure you've been following with the developments with the central bank, we're zeroing in on the central bank's audited financial statement for 2022, where it posted a staggering and a colossal loss of 60.8 billion Ghana cedis. Already, people have started talking about what that money can do in terms of the number of hospitals and so on and so forth. Now, the central bank says 48 billion out of that is due to impaired capital from the debt restructuring. It also says don't blame us for any subliminal policy decisions because this is not a policy error per se, but it's more to do with the fiscal side of things, i.e., the finance minister comes to us, the finance minister needs money, we have to give him the money, and we cannot say we won't give him the money. And so if the finance minister, of course, the government through the finance minister says we can't pay, how do you blame us for it? Where do you stand on this? What's your perspective?
Yeah, hello. If you can hear me, hello.
I can hear you very clearly, Prof.
Hello, Moro. Can you hear me, please?
I can hear you.
Yes. So nobody is saying that the central bank is not supposed to be come to a rescue when economies are not doing well. Effectively, the central bank forms the channel through which, government have been using to reactivate economies when things are down. But then the channel and the medium of re-energizing the economy is very, very important. It's not just, per the law or by an act that there's a limit to which the central bank can pass on funds to the government. It's not just by chance. We are talking about economics here. And it's not just, an exercise of having a law to say that you can only lend 5% of your expected revenue or to the central government. There's a reason for that. Now, where there are two channels that they are into the economy. One is through the monetary channels. That is to use the central banks, to use the banks. So do an on-lending to the banks, and then the banks will find a way to also lend to the public or the businesses. Another route is the fiscal side, but that is quite problematic because the policies of the government of the day may differ from, the realities of economics that are supposed to be achieved for the welfare of the people. So in other jurisdictions, we use inflation rate as our target for, measuring whether the central bank's activity, which is the monetary controls, are having impact or not. But then in other parts of the world, they use, for the sake of the welfare of the people, they use employment. Your monetary policy activities, how many jobs have been created, i.e., through your monetary policy activities, how many people have access to funds to create jobs, to create businesses, and they can employ through that. So those are the things they look at. But in our case, we had a situation where the central bank was playing its role of rescuing the economy, but then overemphasizing on the wrong channel that, they have a limitation in terms of lending to the central government. So they went astray. Instead of using the monetary channels, that's their job. At the end of the day, when they use the monetary channels and the economies get re-energized and the central banks needs money, the central bank can use, taxes and other things to tax the system to get that money that they want. And let me ask you one question. You see, as a central bank, when you pump money into the system, it's a liability to you. I'm talking about generic operations. So these liabilities that you have, you pump into the system, you are expecting certain assets to be created in the economy. And it is expected that whatever you pump in the system, in the long run, it could be 10 years, it could be 15 years, or it could be 20 years. That money that you pump into the system will come back to you, the central bank, through your monetary, activity. So maybe you increase interest rate and you whet the appetite of the people to come and invest, because at that time, the economy had been re-energized, money is in people's pocket and they are looking for a place to invest them. But as we speak now, as the central bank, what is going to be the benefit of that rescue they gave us? The problems that we're going through. They can't define, they can't quantify because it went through the wrong channel. It went through it's on social project. I went, back into the force of the central bank. So effectively, I don't have problem with the central bank coming to rescue the economy as it's supposed to be, but we should ask ourselves whether they use the right channel in doing that.
So I get the impression from what you're saying that if the losses arose, for instance, as a result of quantitative easing, like we saw what happened in England, perhaps the conversation would have been different. Perhaps the conversation would have been different.
Exactly.
Okay.
Wouldn't have been a problem at all because that's the core mandate. And there's economic reason, there is a financial reason for doing that.
Right. But Prof, this, what you can term as this quasi-fiscal activity which the central bank has undertaken, don't you think it has come about because of this lie we've been telling ourselves that the central bank enjoys absolute autonomy and independence when we know that by its very governance structure, it doesn't? Now you can tell that it appears that even its operational autonomy has been attacked.
That's very true. That's very true. You see, there seems to be an abuse of the last straw of autonomy that we're holding on, which is operational autonomy. And I see it to be, it's been abused here because our central bank, and the normal circumstance, shouldn't have been through the fiscal direction. And, the acts are clear. It's not just playing with the law or whatever. It has to, there's an economic reason and possibly extension financial reason for doing that. And so if your mandate is to wire funds through the banking corridors, and now you are going directly, you are lending to the government, that 60.8 billion that has been lost. That's about 13% of our GDP. Yeah. And clearly, it's a huge sum of money. And so from where I sit, I think, the central bank needs to have some questions to answer. And possibly, we may need some reforms in terms of our rules and regulations and how we define autonomy as far as the central bank is concerned.
So these losses do not necessarily suggest a policy insolvency. The central bank can still run even with the colossal loss it has suffered. That's fine because we know what its core mandate is. Do you then, based on that, agree with those who say perhaps we should leave the central bank governor alone because really and truly it decided to engage in a non-core central bank activity which has perhaps gone not exactly what we wanted? In fact, the central bank itself says we had to do it, otherwise the economy would have collapsed. People had to be paid. We know what happened. Where do you stand on this? You think somebody should be answering some questions? Somebody should be held responsible for this, as the minority has said? Or you think it's the entire monetary policy committee that should be held responsible? Or just the chair of it, and that's the central bank governor?
Get a question well, but if you can hear me, I may respond to the partial aspect that I got.
Okay.
You see, it's quite problematic, right? The central bank, in its existence, and then the fiscal side, which is the central government in its operations, are supposed to seek the welfare of the people. In other jurisdictions, the target of the central bank's activities, looking at how they inject money through interest rate corridors, how they take out money from the system through the monetary policy activities and all those, are, in turn, has to look at the welfare of the people.
Okay.
the welfare of the people. Now, the central, can they tell us the impact that that rescue has made in this economy? That's what we need to understand. If it has made impact, maybe through job creation, through reductions of interest rate, through inflation, reduction, then obviously we can say that they are doing well. But
So in other words, okay.
if you have economic manager, why the finance minister's head was.
Okay, so I get the point you're making. Unfortunately, we don't have a very good line, but I think the point you're making is that we must have some kind of a value for money analysis underlining or underpinning the kinds of expenditure that the central bank has made. I think that's the point Prof is making.
Oh, yes, very important.
Right.
Yes, very, very important.
That's a very legitimate question. But I asked about whether somebody should be held reliable or responsible. Just a quick one. Do you think somebody should be sanctioned, or we should just allow sleeping dogs to lie and say next time don't do that?
No, you don't allow sleeping dogs to lie.
Okay.
The laws the central bank has made, they may recover, right? They may recover. But then the negative.
Oh la la. Well, unfortunately, he says they may recover. I have read something from Dr. Keselato Force in the course of the week who said it may take about 20 years. It may take about 20 years. But here's the thing, Mr. Alfred, I'll come to you, sir. I think I like your preliminary comment that you made. That I know there's more that you want to say, but I mean, this is the bank that made a profit of 1.21 billion in 2021, and then all of a sudden there's a huge turnaround in 2022 where it's made a loss of 60.8 billion. I mean, what could have possibly happened? I mean, yes, we've had some of the reasons that have been given, but as you heard the Honorable MP said, it said it still doesn't add up. I mean, you can't be both a giver and receiver at the same time, buy these bonds at very astronomical rates, and then you make a loss and say, well, I had to come and save the government. Take the blame because you caused it. I don't know where you stand on this.
I say good morning to you. First time we met was when we talked about Auntie case here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you were here. That's true.
We are here again on the same issue.
He's told me that he doesn't want to comment on the central bank matter because if he wants to start, he won't end now. So we should bring him in when it's time for Cecilia.
And good morning to my honorable MP. Even though he's my MP, he hasn't called a town hall meeting to tell us or ask us whether
is it true?
Whether they think the Bank of Ghana governor should go. They are doing things on their own accord, and I don't think it's constitutional.
Right.
So I'll implore them to call their constituents.
Maybe there was a meeting, but
there was
were
no
not
meeting.
invited.
If they called a meeting, I'd have heard it. He's not an NDC MP. He's an MP of Cape Coast.
I agree with you.
Cape Coast South, of which I'm a member, I'm a constituent.
I agree with
and
you.
so I believe that whatever they want to do, they are on recess now.
Right.
They should call their constituents and ask them
whether
what they are doing it's in the interest of Ghana or not. But from where I'm sitting, I would always say that, you see, when you are reading finance or the statement of accounts, you can have two eyes to it. If they are not given the proper and rightful interpretation, you would always assume and make inferences in so many instances. And that is why you always have the chairman's comment and the auditor's comment, and you have whether it's a fair statement or whether it's there's a term for it, it will come back. However, when you look at what has happened so far, you realize that there was a whole economic crunch, not only in Ghana, but across the globe. And that is why, as we sit here today, we are also, the UK government is facing a 150 billion.
I've just been told that I haven't announced the WhatsApp line yet. It's 0244 097934, 0244 097934. That's the WhatsApp line. If you have any comments that you want to share with us, please feel free to send it 0244 097934. Again, I repeat it, 0244097934. Thank you. Please go ahead.
So
it's about interpretations.
It's about interpretations and how you want to take it. And you can always play around it anytime, any day. So I am coming back to the issue. You realize that the global economic crunch has affected every economy in various weights and situations. Some would say, oh, it's your own internal processes that has caused this. But when you look at it on the bigger surface, we had a serious hit in Ghana after you realize that things were going well till the hit came after the COVID. And around that time, we needed to clean the books. And even before that time, we had the bank cleanup and everything. When you look at a bank's books, the first thing you look at is how well they are recovering their loans and advances that have been given out. On the bigger picture of the Bank of Ghana, it will be the bonds and the advances to other institutions or bigger the standards or the the stocks and things that they take on. So the recovery rate is very important. If not, you have to make provision for it in your books. The first instance is to make a provision, before the write-off. You'd have to clean it up from your books because you can't keep it in your books forever. When you look at some of the things that have gone on with Bank of Ghana and you ask them, because they are an open institution, you can always seek for better and further particulars. You realize that they have non-marketable bonds and stocks to the tune of over 37 billion.
Yep.
And this happened since we have some dated as far back as 2005. On the 7th of July 2005, the bond number was 2005/3. We have a lot in 2015 and a lot in 2016, a few in 2014, some in 2018, even some that were renewed in 2020. When you look at the date of issue, it was 31/12/2020, 31/12/2020, about 3 of them. And then we have 2015, 2014, 2016, 2016, and 2018. So it tells you the sequence that, listen, this does not start today. Can the Bank of Ghana still keep these in their books? No. There should be a cutoff. And especially going to IMF to start all this whole financial sector cleanup, you need to have clean books. Ghana government will not be able to pay all these things within the next year or two. So what do they have to do? First of all, they made provision for it. And these are the things that they've been holding in their books for till date. Then immediately they had to write off from their books because they can't hold this on and expect IMF to be giving you money to make sure that your systems are okay. Also, we should look at a situation. We sat down, we were in this country where we had inflation in Zimbabwe was over 1,000%, skyrocketing. I mean, you could go and ask for one thing today, the next minute you go and get your money and come back, and the thing is about 3 or 4 times the price. Is that what you want to see in Ghana? The Monetary Policy Division would have to come in to make sure that inflation is held down or more or less controlled. You have to make sure that the devaluation of your currency is not skyrocketing. We saw what happened with the CD dollar within the last few years.
Yeah.
All these things were things that Bank of Ghana had to come in to make sure that, listen, let us take a decision. Let us take a dive into this. We either have to make sure that the things don't escalate to uncontrollable levels, or we can leave it and say that, listen, it's not as wishing. We are doing a fair bit of it.
Right.
Let's look at it that way and let things go haywire. After that, how do we control it?
Valid point. But here's the thing, and this is where sometimes I feel there's a bit of a policy incoherence or policy inconsistency. And what do I mean? The same central bank hikes its prime rate or prime rate.
Yeah.
And they'll tell you that at the heart of it is that they want to mop up excess liquidity. There's too much cash flowing fewer goods.
Yeah.
So there's inflation. Okay. I have heard other economists argue that the inflation that we record, especially from last year, sometime I think from August thereabout, August, September, December, was not a monetary issue per se. It was not a monetary problem because and that it was more import driven. So basically the supply side of things.
Yeah.
So if you import raw materials into this country, very expensive, and you fall on that for whatever you want to use, for production. Clearly, and then of course you hike taxes at the port and so on and so forth. Definitely it's going to have an impact on inflation. And so let's look at the fiscal side of things. It's not necessarily the monetary side of things. But why am I raising this question, this issue? I'm raising this issue because you can't have the same central bank who says, let me tame inflation by hiking monetary policy, and then the same central bank is now printing money and putting monies into the system. So what are you doing? The same person says there's a lot of money in the system. Let me mop it up. But you are also contributing to the monies in the system because you're printing money. And here we're talking billions of cities. I feel that something is not right.
You see,
with the policy.
I appreciate where you are coming from.
Yes.
But if you are going to talk about this so-called printing of money, it's going to be a whole debate. Today.
Okay.
I can take more than 3 hours to explain
why that is done.
Why all these things came up.
So is it a position that the printing of the money
it's not about printing of money, it's about when the bonds fell due and inflation was high, was government able to buy more bonds or issue bonds for purchase? No, it wasn't. Did government need money at that time to operate?
True.
Yes, it needed. Was government able to go onto the capital market to raise funds?
Because
no, it couldn't.
He had lost.
It couldn't because of the bad ratings that the foreign rating agencies had given us, which now even the World Bank was saying that, listen, some of them were too harsh because it was strategically working towards the African continent to make sure that, listen, they don't get to the level that they're expecting. Because it got to a time, Ghana was one of the fastest growing economies in the world. And everybody saw it as it was growing. However, there are certain ways, sometimes inflation can even be imported. And it's sometimes very difficult for Bank of Ghana to control some of these things. Let's look at it. When COVID happened, before COVID, when you are shipping something from China, it's about $1,000 or less. Immediately COVID happened, and after that, you are shipping things from China, it's over $4,000.
There's a general problem with global supply chain.
Thank you.
I agree.
So, you see, all these things work into your system. You cannot control it because it's being imported. Now, what do you have to do to also make sure that, listen, from your side of things, it doesn't escalate? Because if they are sat down to look at all these things and say that, listen, okay, this thing is being imported, these things are coming in, I cannot do anything about it. We also have to make sure that our people are making money. So if people are making money, how can we do this? Or how can we sort all these things out for them to be okay, or to be fair?
So you're saying that, yes, you agree that advancing loans to the government, printing money and advancing loans to the government can contribute to inflationary pressures. However, it was necessary. What you're saying, it is necessary.
What I'm saying is that at that particular point in time, they had to pay the bonds off, those that were falling due. Because you don't want to also lose internal confidence that you had built already. And you needed to make provision for it, for those that got to the stage where the DDP came in.
Are you, by this, saying that you know for a fact what the monies that were printed and given to the government was used for?
I'm saying that when the central bank came in, they needed to service the bonds that were falling due.
Okay. So because one of the things that minorities may ask is we need to know what the money is used for.
They needed to service the bonds, the cocoa bonds, the other bonds, the marketable bonds that were falling due. And because government couldn't raise money, government also could not pay off at that time because you have to raise more bonds to pay off the old ones.
So the central bank was in a catch-22 situation.
They needed to come in and make sure that, listen, the investor confidence that people had would not erode.
I get it.
So there are so many things that have gone on. And we can play around it. But the end result is showing. They've made provision for it. Does it mean that because they've made provision for this, they can't operate as a central bank? No, they can operate. So that is a no-no in a start. But do they need to make provision so that they have a clean slate for us to move on as a nation and rebound the economy back? Yes, they needed to do that. And that is what they've done. Has it helped us in a situation where we are not facing financial crunch within the system where people will find so much loss within the system? No. It's not created that. And so there's no loss within. But they have to absorb that situation, that loss that has come in.
So do you know why they didn't? You don't speak for the central bank, but obviously the fiscal and the monetary work hand in hand, and you belong to the fiscal. Do you know why the central bank decided not to seek parliamentary approval in order to exceed the 5% threshold?
The central bank does not seek parliamentary approval. They sat down with the minister and the accountant general.
Right.
They decide on what they have to do. The minister seeks parliamentary approval.
Yes.
The minister went to parliament with his budget. He told them what he needed. He told them where he was going to get money from,
it was
and everything.
yes.
So if the minister has brought all these out and you don't ask further and better particulars, where have they gone wrong?
But that's not enough.
What's
I'm sorry,
not enough?
that's not enough. I mean,
What's
it's not
not
enough
enough?
to just inform Parliament. What he should have done was to say, this is the situation we find ourselves in. We need to cross the 5%.
But that's what he went to Parliament to do.
he just informed
Your
Parliament.
budget in, it's not just informing them. You are telling them that, listen, look at my budget, debate upon it, and approve it for me.
Okay.
Because I need it to operate.
Right.
And if you've done that, you've looked at it, you've approved it.
Okay.
And he needs the money to operate. Where has he gone wrong?
It'll be interesting to get the views of Honorable on this, which is enough. I mean, once I've told you the budget has been debated, it's been passed. It's as good as seeking permission, and the permission has been given.
From the
But
minister,
Honorable
if they are
Mpade
not
noted, because I'll come to you on that. Yes, Honorable, please, I want you to learn.
They always ask for further and better particulars from the minister
Right.
when they need it.
Okay.
They can call the minister to order. They can call the minister to come and explain what they don't understand or appreciate in the budget statement or what they need to understand further. And that's why they do the financial committee debate before.
So the finance minister has done this bit. The minority side of Parliament didn't do the follow-up. So you can't blame me. I told you, I came to you, I presented the budget to you. It was debated.
In the budget and everything.
It was
approved.
approved. So you can't come back to me and say you didn't seek
you didn't
parliamentary.
know.
Okay.
I beg to differ.
Okay, that's fine.
I really beg
Honorable.
to differ.
So why are you complaining? I mean, the budget was put before you. It was contained in the budget. The finance minister read it. You debated it. You didn't ask any questions. You passed it. So why do you then come back to say you didn't come to seek parliamentary approval? And so you have to answer some questions.
Well, all these things that Alfred is talking about actually didn't happen. That is why we are where we are at the moment.
Really?
Yes.
What didn't happen?
Well, if you give me a chance to explain what didn't happen, as you said, what happened. He rightly said, yes, the governor sat down with the finance minister, and the finance minister was supposed to come to Parliament. And the finance minister did not give us any of the information we have discovered that this is exactly what they were doing. We were told there was going to be a debt exchange. If you read the budget, in fact, the debt exchange in the budget itself was just about a paragraph. If you look in 2022's budget, you see more in the media review as the chicken basically, have come home to roost, that you see about a page or two on the debt exchange program. All the things that the central bank has done, the monies that are being given to government in terms of this printing money that we are talking about, the write-offs that the government is trying to do, all these things are things that the government, the central bank hasn't actually got the right to do them.
Okay.
And it breaches the Bank of Ghana's Act itself, 30 and 67, and then 53 of the Public Financial Management Act. Now, you talked about something which I wanted, and then I will touch on something. You talked about having gone to go to a town hall and have a town hall meeting with our people.
It worried you.
No.
I knew you were responsible to this.
The last time that happened, if you remember, by our colleagues on the other side who went to their constituent to ask them what they should do. And the constituent told them, according to them, that they should come and get rid of the finance minister. We know what happened.
Oh, but that's when we all know that they didn't go to the constituencies.
Well, you are saying.
That's what I know.
Oh, you know they didn't. So you are calling your guys.
You also held the press conference. You didn't come to us.
You calling
you held
MPs.
the press conference. I said it didn't happen because you held the press conference. In my constituency, you held the press conference, but you didn't come to us.
Yeah,
didn't you hold the press conference?
I'm not talking about press conference.
But you are part of it.
I'm telling you that our colleagues on the other side.
I don't know about them because they are not in my constituency.
It's all over.
They are not in my constituency.
So, Honorable, you're saying, essentially what you're saying is that it makes no difference.
It makes no, look,
whether
Ghanaians are basically fed up because this government does things with impudence, without any recourse to anyone, and they think they can get away with it. One important point that you made, which is also part of this problem, is that Mr. Addison, I'm looking at this picture there, became a superman trying to save Ghana's economy. In that excitement, he basically went beyond his boundaries and started becoming a fiscal authority in addition to a monetary authority. For that reason, is where we have gotten all this financing that is coming. But most important thing you talked about.
Honorable, in other words, can I also say that he only became helpless in the face of fiscal dominance?
Well, because the finance minister became lazy. Okay, the finance minister, it's something you did say on inflation.
Yes.
I think many people have spoken about the kind of inflation we're experiencing, that it wasn't the same kind of inflation we've had in the past.
Yes.
Most of the time, inflation is a demand-driven.
Right.
When your economy has a lot of activities and it's overheated, and the basic tool for doing that is what central bank uses in terms of targeting inflation. We were experiencing inflation under these world, events that had become a supply-side inflation.
Yes.
And I think some of us were saying to the central bank, please put the brakes on and allow the fiscal authorities to deal with this problem, because this is not your problem. But Addison wanted to save the world. Therefore, he decided that he was going to even deal with inflation. That was not the cause of that inflation not being there. The other side also was that the third angle of inflation that we're experiencing is as a result of this money that he was printing to save the world, as you rightly said, putting more money into the system, and that money was unproductive. The money was going to central government and disappearing. It was unproductive, because if it was, it would have been a demand inflation.
Dr. Kumar said we had salaries to pay.
Well,
we didn't have money to pay salaries.
Well, they will say so many things. The monies that came in during the COVID, and we don't want to go that. I said, Ghanaians are fed up.
Okay.
People have switched up. They're not even listening to the things that. But this governor has basically gone beyond, and his position has become untenable.
Okay.
He has been the architect. Not only now, the finance minister takes a lot of the blame, but now, seeing what has come to light, this governor has been the architect of some of the challenges that we have in this country as a result of misuse of resources from the central bank to try and save the fiscal authorities.
We have to wrap up on this in the next 5 minutes. But there's a reality check that we all need to address our minds to. Tomorrow, the NDC, let's say tomorrow, the NDC is in power. And you are hard pressed with cash. And you go to the central bank for some assistance because you need to finance your fiscal deficit or your deficit. Or like you said, finance government activities. Now, these are critical government activities as far as you're concerned. Others can debate it and say it's not necessary, but you think it's necessary. Do you honestly think that President Mohammed's appointee, who is a central bank governor, can look in the face of President Mohammed and say, I won't give you money, I won't give you cash, because I want to exert and assert my independence and my autonomy? You can go and bend the sea, especially when you have also lost access to the capital market. You've been shut out for whatever reason that we don't want to get into. So you have only two options. It's either he borrows you money or you raise taxes quickly.
You see, all these things that we are talking
about. So what would you do?
Hold on. We wouldn't have done any of these things that you have talked about.
Okay.
Where we have gotten to is not only about finding solutions, but also knowing the causes, so we don't revisit it.
Right. Absolutely agree with you.
Part of the reason is the debt that is basically engulfed us as a result of this government overborrowing. Why are we shut of the capital market? They didn't wake up one morning and shut us because we have borrowed beyond our means. We have been downgraded, and we are complaining of the people who have downgraded. If you don't want to be downgraded, don't go to the Eurobond market, because when you go there, you will be downgraded if you are not doing the things that you are going to borrow money for.
Okay.
And it is all this problem. Why were we in dire need of money? It's because we have borrowed so much that even people who will have to give us money have decided they're not going to give us. Therefore, we have to come internally and rely on the central bank and the governor to act as a Superman and try to save Ghana's economy.
So we brought this onto ourselves.
Where Ken Ofori-Atta was getting an easy part because if he needs money, his brother Addison will print it for him. So why will Ken Ofori-Atta get up and work?
I get it.
with the fiscal authorities to save the economy.
Understand you. Now, I'm just going to do, I'll bring you Alfred so for concluding remarks so we can move to Cecilia Dapa and do that in 30 minutes. As for the Cecilia Dapa matter, I'll beg of you because the private legal practitioner has a lot to say. You will just do what I'll call a concluding remarks and then we can leave because we've had enough from the politicians. We need to hear from the non-politician. Yeah. Now, here's the thing. I'll ask you about, and I'll need about a minute or two on this because I've heard some people say, you can go and picket at the central bank for God knows how long. It will not change anything. And that you know the right processes to trigger. We know where the central bank governor belongs in terms of what the law says. And you know the right processes to trigger. So it will be a waste of time for you to go and picket. Maybe the optics might be good, but it would come to nothing. Because if the end game is to get him out, you know exactly what to do. But Alfred, do you have anything you want to say quickly, just as brief reaction to what the Honorable has said?
Yeah, he said a lot of things and he talked about borrowing and everything. And we all know that borrowing did not start only when Nana Addo Dankwa took office. Yeah. When I was mentioning the non-marketable stock and the bonds that were on, I gave you a whole list. And out of the list, many of them were from between 2012 to 2016. Right. Many of them were from that time. So these were monies that were locked up and Bank of Ghana had to make provision for it. Okay. In their time, they didn't do it. Right. So if Bank of Ghana has seen the wisdom now in doing that, I don't know why you will now call on the governor that, listen, I'm cleaning my books, and you tell the governor that resign because you want to clean your books. Okay. I think it's wrong and it's unfair and it's a lazy approach in doing things. We have found a problem. We have seen a problem. We are faced with a problem. It's either we want to correct it or we want to destroy it. And you see, this whole thing of, then the country is so bad, is so down, everything is so bad. And meanwhile, you are still fighting and pushing and coming and doing anything possible to come into power. What are you coming to do then if you think the whole economy is shambolistic and gone? Okay. What do you want to come and do then? Yeah. So let us be serious and let us know that, listen, you are coming because you know that there is a future. That things are being put right. And once this thing starts working, we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Okay. And I'm telling you, by the end of this year, you will see that things will be picking up. Okay. It's already started. And I have no doubt about the Minister for Finance. I have no doubt about the governor. From the monetary side and from the fiscal side, I believe that together they can do it. And by early next year, we will see great signs of this economy rebounding to its glory that it has.
Thank you very much. We'll move to a second issue. And the second issue is another matter which has been... It's on the lips of many Ghanaians. It's about the embattled former Minister of Sanitation, Cecilia Dapa. She's in court. Well, not the other one where she's taking some persons to court because they're stealing her money, but the office of the special prosecutor is taking her to court. He's taking her to court because he wants the court to confirm certain actions that it has taken as a way of getting to the bottom of the monies that have been found in her home. I'll take a short break. When I come back, I have some messages that I need to read. And, okay, I'm told I should read the messages now. So it said the Bank of Ghana should explain clearly whether their 97.4 million cedis domestic and foreign travels are by air only, because they said 90% of the 131.6 million cedis on their maintenance is on fuel and traveling related, which relates to fueling. Alibaba from Medina. Now, this one says that the VA leadership in Ghana said 99% of Ghanaian politicians are wicked, greedy, selfish criminals and a lot of vampirism in them. Just that this group of criminals don't carry guns in the night. They're stealing trillions of the poor people's resources every day. The youth are frustrated and not working, but all of them are using the taxpayers' money to buy V8 in the name of security and comfort. Have you ever enjoyed the kind of comfort and security they have been enjoying since 1992? It goes on and on and on. It's a very long message, and it's coming from John Achu Akaketo or something. Actually, when you send me a long message like this, I struggle to read them. Good morning, Joe Pasasa, Blakuma South. Cecilia Dapa girls, okay, I haven't gotten to this yet, but let me just do this quickly and then we can take a break and then come back to Cecilia Dapa. So the joke about the Bank of Ghana issue is this. They claim that they intend to overturn the 55 billion capital deficit by 2027. This is a big joke. I have analyzed the profits of the Bank of Ghana for the last 10 years from 2012 to 2021. The bank's total profit for the 10 years period is around 13 billion cedis. The bank would need to make a profit of over 11 billion each year from 2023, I think is a response to what you said, to 2027 to be able to recover the capital deficit of 55 billion by 2027. This is highly impossible, especially when the bank's interest income is projected to decrease significantly due to the domestic debt exchange program. The central bank must admit this and correct it as a matter of urgency. They owe us a lot of credibility. That's coming from Muta. Okay. Good morning, Inside Pages. To your panelists, I think the losses at the central bank is intentional. The ministers are keeping the money in their homes. They take the money from state institutions and store it for themselves. But the fact that Cedar Park has got somebody stash in their home doesn't mean that all ministers are doing that. Let's be careful. In any case, we're still trying to establish the source of that money. The Attorney General says the CID should do that.